Paper Wars Cannon Fodder was originally released back in 2011 for the Wii, PSP, PS3, and iOS devices. Now it's being remastered by iFun for All for the Nintendo Switch. Having not played the original game but reviewing iFun for All Serial Cleaner last year and liking it, I had an optimistic expectation for this title. It's a tower defense game that's stylized to look like it was made in a child's notebook, a child that has absurdly bad spelling. Let's see if it's worth diving into. Paper Wars Cannon Fodder Devastated is a mouthful of a title, and it doesn't feature any actual story, so we're skipping that section and jumping right into the gameplay. Gameplay can be split up into two sections, missions and survival. Missions are broken up into 3 chapters with 3 difficulties each for a total of 84 missions. Before each mission, a brief objective is given to you and it gets increasingly more difficult as you make your way down the list of missions. However, those changes in difficulty can be spikes at times rather than a slow progression upward. The objectives for missions tend to specify the number of enemies you're trying to blow up, which type of enemies you're trying to blow up, and the number of enemies that you can miss before the game ends. Jumping into the gameplay, it's pretty obvious from the get-go that this game was meant to be played with a touchscreen. You control a cannon at the bottom left corner of the screen as you aim with the analog stick at oncoming waves of enemy soldiers. The reticle feels a bit slow when controlling with the traditional controller, and sadly there isn't any option to change the sensitivity of the controller. This becomes a bigger issue when power-ups start to show up. Collecting power-ups in this game has you hover over them with the reticle and then pressing the fire button. Having the already slow aim with the controller only gets further handicapped when you're trying to chase power-ups while also trying to shoot down the enemies. The icing on this terrible cake is that there's always a present pause button at the top right of the screen, a famous design choice for mobile games that for some reason is always present in the dock mode but inaccessible with the controller. The plus button doesn't even do anything. All of this reinforces that it's a game that should be played in portable mode even though the game doesn't specify it. Playing in portable mode with the touchscreen feels much better, but not to the extent I'd like. While the controls are much quicker with the touchscreen, it feels a bit awkward to hold down on the touchscreen to charge up a missile. It sort of slows down the mayhem that should be present in a tower defense game. Additionally, there's just a really bad implementation of the HD rumble in this game that makes both playing in dock and portable mode uncomfortable unless you turn off the rumble itself. On the bright side, there's a decent variation of power-ups between the different chapters of the game. The winter themed chapter, for example, lets you gain power-ups that freeze enemies, while the grassland world gives you power-ups like earthquakes. It adds in some welcome variety to the gameplay on top of the increasing difficulty. On the other side of the gameplay is a survival mode that's just as hindered for the same reasons as the mission mode. With that said, I found this mode to be a bit more fun than the missions as it feels much more like a traditional tower defense game, having you try to aim for the new high score. Survival mode's gameplay is very much the same setup as missions, although it's endless and it comes in waves. Every wave gives you a goal amount of enemy kills, and once you pass it, it gets increased incrementally. Now all of this isn't to say that the gameplay can't be fun and challenging, it can be, but it's cluttered in bad design choices that feel like you're playing an unfinished game or a straight port of an iOS game to Switch without any changes to the design. Paper Wars Cannon Fodder Devastated is a terrible looking game. It's stylized to look like a child's school notebook, which I don't mind, plenty of other games have adopted the theme well. In the case of Paper Wars though, it looks incredibly cheap and like a last minute design choice. Things that look like they're aimed to be charming come off as rather annoying, like the way random sections of the main menu are written upside down. The entire game UI is also designed for a touchscreen, although it's never specified that you have to play it in portable mode. Things like the pause button are simply just inaccessible in dock mode, even though it's always in display during the gameplay. The visual design rules vary when they shouldn't. Why can I operate the main menu and play missions with the controller, but I can't pause the game with one? It's an overlooked design choice that just suggests how rushed this game was. The sound effects for the game are pretty high quality, but they get repetitive really quickly. Each soldier enemy uses the exact same sound clip, and when you're constantly shooting down waves of them, it sounds like a mess. The music tracks are uninspiring and are quite noticeably looped throughout the missions. That brings us over to the HD rumble in this game that's just absolutely butchered. Much like how the indie game Snake Pass originally had the HD rumble cranked up to the max, so does this game, although it's much worse. It's a much bigger issue in this game because the highly audible rumble happens every time you fire a missile, which is pretty often. When playing in dock mode, I felt like my Pro Controller was going to break. On the other hand, when playing in portable mode, I felt uncomfortable holding the Switch by the Joy-Con, and laying the Switch on the flat surface when only using the touchscreen only made the rumble worse. Luckily, you can turn off the rumble in the settings, but it's turned on by default. Paper Wars Cannon Fodder Devastated feels like a cash grab. It's an old iOS game with a new zombie graphic thrown in so enemies look different enough for a bonus chapter that you can call extra content. The presentation in visuals and audio is just badly done to the point where it affects the gameplay. You can't interact with the game entirely while in dock mode, and playing with the controller feels like it's handicapped, but playing in portable mode also feels uncomfortable because of the HD rumble. At least you can turn the rumble off, but it's just sort of a mess of bad design choices with subpar gameplay. I don't recommend Paper Wars Ken and Fodder Devastated at all. It's $10 right now, it's completely overpriced, and I don't even recommend getting it on sale. It's just a subpar game. It's quite a shame too, because I quite enjoyed the last game I reviewed for them, called Serial Cleaner. It's sad to see them drop the ball like this. That does it for my review of Paper Wars Ken and Fodder Devastated for the Nintendo Switch. If you have any questions about the game or future review requests, please leave them in the comments down below. You can also reach me over on Twitter, Instagram, or my Discord, which are all linked in the description. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.